It is now my great pleasure to introduce our guest today, a friend of the pod, back for her third go on the show, who is running for the Democratic nomination for Colorado Secretary of State. It's State Senator Jessie Danielson. Hey, Jessie.
Hey, Ian. How's it going?
Oh, we're great. I'm going to introduce you again to the listeners here. Senator Danielson represents Jefferson County's District 22, the home of the Get More Smarter podcast in the Colorado State Senate. She is our state senator. As a Democratic state legislator, Jessie has focused her work on economic security for working Coloradans, expanding voters' access to the ballot, better protections for seniors and the at-risk, environmental preservation, and equality for women. Prior to serving in elected office, Jessie was the Colorado State Director for America Votes. Her leadership was instrumental in the passage of 2013's groundbreaking Voter Access and Modernized Election Act, otherwise known as the reason why you can vote by mail. She served as then-Governor Hickenlooper's appointee on both the Voter Access and Modernized Elections Commission and the Colorado Commission on Aging. Jessie was first elected to the Colorado Senate in 2018 and re-elected in 2022. She serves as the chair of the Business, Labor, and Technology Committee and vice chair of the Agricultural and Natural Resources Committee. She also served in the State House from 2015 through 2019, including as Speaker pro tempore during that second term. She also previously worked as the political director for NARAL Pro-Choice Colorado, now known as Cobalt, another friend of the pod. She has also worked as a housing coordinator for Connections for Independent Living, a nonprofit organization that helps individuals with disabilities live full and independent lives. And if that's not enough, she's also a board member of a former board chair, of Emerge Colorado, and has served on the boards of NARAL and Progress Now, my old job. She's also a fourth-generation Coloradan. Jessie Danielson, welcome back to the Get More Smarter podcast.
Thank you so much, Ian. It's great to be here.
Well, you've done a lot in your years of service to Colorado, but besides what we just said in the intro, can you tell us a little bit about yourself or anything we might have missed?
Sure. Well, thanks again. It's wonderful to be here. I live in Wheat Ridge, Colorado, in Jefferson County with my husband and my two kids. I have an 8-year-old daughter named Izzy, and I have a 4-year-old boy named Callum. And, I grew up on a farm north of Greeley outside of a little town called Alt. And so he's right. My family's been here. I'm the fourth generation. My kids are the fifth to live in this amazing place. And I'm really proud of my rural roots, my agricultural roots. My dad and our family were farmers and raised livestock for generations. And actually was just back up in Greeley for a fundraiser at the Crest. So your listeners up in the northeastern part of the state will know that. But yeah, I think that, my background, my family, my roots here in the state run deep. I care deeply for the people who live here. And it's part of why I wanted to go into public service. And you mentioned early on in the introduction that I worked for NARAL Pro-Choice Colorado. After I graduated from high school, went to the University of Colorado in Boulder. And that is actually where I started working on politics. So I was a volunteer for NARAL Pro-Choice Colorado, cut my teeth organizing there, and just did a lot of voter turnout and voter registration, and then moved into that organization the day after I graduated.
Oh, how cool. I didn't realize you were a volunteer before you ended up working there. That's awesome. One question that we're trying to ask all of our guests, mostly because we don't have very many Republicans on the show, why are you a Democrat? What made you identify with the Democratic Party in your political life?
There are real differences between the parties. And as I said, I got started in politics because the issue of reproductive justice really resonated with me as a young person. I was actually an art major, for those of you who don't know. That might surprise some folks that someone in my line of work studied art. But at CU, I also found politics that made me feel like I could make a difference. So the issue of reproductive justice just kind of hit the core of me in terms of equality and just your basic human rights to have control over your own body, your own life. And so I found the organization that put me to work, and I felt like as one person, I could actually go out and make a difference and get people registered to vote or educated about the issues, the ballot measures we were fighting in 1998, or great pro-choice candidates. And those values are in the Democratic Party platform, along with the labor movement and workers' rights, which, Ian, as you know, has been a really central focus of my legislative career, just really shifting the statutes of the state of Colorado in favor of Colorado workers. environmental protections, the rights of older Coloradans, the rights of disabled Coloradans, public education, healthcare, all of these things that I care very deeply about, the basics and those values are in the Democratic Party. And not to say that I, admonish anyone for being a Republican. You know where I grew up, Ruby Red,
Mm-hmm.
Weld County. Okay, so lots of friends and neighbors don't share my party, but I felt strongly about being a part of the Democratic Party because that's where those values lived. And I was moved to action at a young age. And so I feel confident in my choice.
Yeah, same. Good argument too. You've served in the legislature for a little over a decade at this point, which is kind of crazy to think about. What made you decide to run for Secretary of State in 2026?
Yeah. So as you were going through my legislative background and my time at America Votes, it lends to the decision to run for this race. And so back in 2013, when I was the state director for America Votes, that's when I was heavily involved and kind of leading the effort and the coalition that changed the law. It was the biggest election rights overhaul in the country that gave us that gold standard of election law where you now have universal mail ballots. But if you wish to vote in person or change something or fix something, vote centers, same day registration. When I moved into the legislature, just continued to focus on voting rights and strengthening our democracy, protecting that gold standard law that we passed in 13, and moving to even enfranchise more voters. The automatic voter registration law, that was mine. And so we got that done. Lots of annual updates to tighten up those great laws that we had in the books. I was urged to run by the community around Colorado, Ian. I have worked on election law and voting rights really since 2006 when America Votes came to Colorado. And so building that record and those relationships and including the county clerks around the state, my opponent is a clerk, but the clerks around the state who are getting engaged in this race are endorsing my campaign because they know and trust me to handle these elections and to really invest in the counties and support the voters all across the state. And so it was really they who came to me. And then along the way, when I passed the laws that I've passed regarding workers' rights or older Coloradans, veterans, women's equality, farm workers' bill of rights, legalizing rain barrels.
Right. I remember. I got one because of you. It's in my backyard right now, hooked up to the downspout.
When I knock on doors still to this day, Ian, people say, "Hey, get over here. It's the rain barrel lady. You got to talk." So, whether it was rain barrels or wildlife corridors or electric vehicles, every one of these issues has built a coalition around my candidacy. And so they want a Democrat in this race that has a proven record of standing up for the values that they care most about, to trust these elections at this most critical time in the face of Trump opposition and Trump attacks with someone that they know and trust and have worked with. And so really it was a broad-based coalition that it showed me that we really need a candidate like me in this race, and had confidence enough to support my primary and move forward. And so here we are.
So you've listed off a ton of stuff you've worked on. That's not even close to the totality of it. And I know you have 2 kids. I have 2 kids. And this question is a little bit like asking you to pick your favorite child. But if you had to pick just one of those legislative accomplishments that you've had over your legislative career, which one are you the most proud of just sitting here right now?
Okay, so this is a question that I've been asked before in this primary. So there's a bit of a mixed answer, Ian. The Equal Pay for Equal Work Act is a standout for me, also because you mentioned the next generation coming up. I have an 8-year-old daughter. I can look her in the eye and say, I did this for you and for your daughters and for your cousins and your neighbors and the other kids who come up, so that she doesn't have to face the kind of discrimination in the workforce that we have. And so that was obviously for folks who are less familiar, the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act meant that if men and women should get paid the same for the same work. And so that's one. The Farm Worker Bill of Rights that I mentioned is another one where in 1 year, the bill that I sponsored and carried it established minimum wage, protection from retaliation, overtime, food, heat, water, housing, transportation, healthcare. I mean, it was a massive step forward for the first time establishing these rights for workers who really power the state. And as someone who grew up in an agricultural family, it made me a lot more proud of the industry that shaped my family. So I think those two are key. But you're right. There's so much with older Coloradans, the disability community, and then I'd say the bulk of work in the labor community. The Worker Protection Act, that's something that I set to do when I came into office in 2014, and we did get it done. But unfortunately, the governor vetoed it again this year. So
Let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, listeners know that I worked on that bill last year and worked with the coalition and supported you in your great work trying to get it passed. It passed. Every Democrat voted for it. It got vetoed. Same story this year. Passed. Every Democrat voted for it. Got vetoed. What do you say? And I mean, you'll no longer be in the legislature. The work continues. We'll have a new governor in 2027. Neither Michael Bennet nor Phil Weiser, I think much to my chagrin and quite frankly surprise, have just come right out and said, like, I'll sign this bill if I'm the governor. What do you make of all these dynamics? Why is it so obvious for Democratic legislators and so hard for Democratic governors?
Well, that's a great question, Ian. That's part of my statement with Governor Polis, was giving him the second opportunity this year, bringing the bill again to say, you saw the backlash in 2025 when you vetoed the measure. You are in direct conflict with the will of the people of the state of Colorado. The winds are in the sails of the labor movement for good reason. When we talk about affordability and the housing crisis and the rising costs in the grocery store and at the gas pump, all of these problems, making a living wage is part of that. And a union is a big part of that. And so this was a simple measure, a basic measure to make it easier for people to unionize. And most people across the state of Colorado are firmly in favor of it, no matter what their party is, Republican, independents, and Democrats alike. Coloradans work hard and they deserve better. And they want the power of the union in their side, in their corner. They should have it. And so he had the opportunity to do the right thing. We gave him that opportunity a second year in a row to say, look what happened when you vetoed it before. It was an incredibly unpopular decision made by one person when everyone else came together to get it done. Try again. Maybe try again. But ultimately, from the beginning, he indicated he would veto it, and veto he did. I'm really confident in the people that are going to be in the legislature after I'm gone, that they are going to bring this measure forward. The community that supported it will be there again to fight for it, probably every year until it gets done. I really wish that the two folks that are running for the governor's race for the Democratic side, well, hey, any of the gubernatorial candidates, Barb Kirkmeyer.
Yeah, Victor Marks for the Worker Protection Act. Let's go.
Yeah, I would welcome it. But yes, Senator Bennet, Attorney General Weiser, and again, I've worked with both of these leaders over my course of my public service. I would love for them to just put an end to the questions and commit to signing the bill. Whomever gets in office, they really need to. It is way overdue. This is 83 years old, right. And it's a very unique and clever union busting tactic. But it's a union busting tactic that they would have the power to get rid of. So I would urge them to commit before one of them gets elected. It will just clarify things for their voters.
I think so too. Going back to your campaign for a second. So you're on the ballot after securing a spot through the state assembly process, along with Jefferson County Clerk Amanda Gonzalez. We had her on the show a couple weeks ago. Tell us why a Democratic primary voter should nominate you instead of her.
Well, there's a lot of reasons, Ian. We need someone in this office of Secretary of State who has actual experience of standing up to power to protect our rights. And I'm the only one in this seat, in this race for the Secretary of State who has that background, experience, knowledge, and the relationships required to do that. So when I mention these policies that I've done, whether it was establishing the Office of Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives, right, or regulating assisted living facilities for abuse and neglect, what have you, most of the policies that I've gotten done were vehemently and publicly opposed by the leadership in my own party. And so to push back, to hold them to account, and ultimately to get the policies done, it has been my day in and day out in my role as a state senator for years on end. The second thing here is we need someone with the experience of these elections and how they run and play out across the state. So, I mean, I built the system that
Right.
we use. She has run a few elections at the county level. Her campaign is very focused on county level service, and what we need right now is someone to rise to the occasion in this unprecedented time of Trump attacks that has that background in the policy, because I helped build this system that we use, that all 64 clerks use to administer their elections across the state, and have defended it ever since. And so I've got that knowledge, that background, that experience, but also, to enforce the laws and to protect our elections and our access to the polls, we're going to need to work hand in glove with the Attorney General's office, whomever wins in the gubernatorial race, the city leaders around the state, the county clerks around the state, the Department of Revenue and other departments around the state, tribal leaders, etc. So again, I'm the only one in the race. My opponent she can't have that kind of experience, background, and support in those relationships. Day one, I have worked with all those leaders. No matter who comes out of any of these primaries, we've worked together. I have a knowledge of how they need to interact with the Secretary of State's office to better serve the clerks around the state. And, as a result of all of our work together, in this primary, I've been endorsed by, 150 sitting elected officials or more. Every union in the state that's getting involved has endorsed me. The Southern Ute Indian tribe, which you can see will need a Secretary of State who understands the unique issues facing tribal voters on both of the reservations. The Southern Ute have endorsed my campaign. They've never endorsed a candidate before in their history.
Huh. I didn't realize that.
And
Congrats.
so,
That's a big win.
thank you. It meant something to me, and it's a clear indication that this is the right seat at the right time for me to seek. But they joined Joe Neguse and Brittany Pedersen and Jason Crow, and then leaders like Lorena Garcia and Elizabeth Velasco, former leaders like Polly Baca, Wellington Webb, Governor Roy Romer, Mark Udall. There's just an incredible amount of momentum, but it also means that this unique coalition around my campaign enables me to take this position from day one and serve them better.
This is a little bit of a tangent, and I want to get into the Trump attacks in a little bit here, but I'm really curious because you're a sort of political professional, operative turned lawmaker, and now you're running for a different office, so you have a little bit of a unique perspective on this. It's weird to me that it is now a foregone conclusion in Colorado that Democrats will, without exception, sweep the governor's race, the SOS race, the AG's race, and the treasurer's race, and that this whole election is essentially over on June 30th for all intents and purposes. Like, all the statewide races are just going to be settled. That's wild. Like, from where we come from politically to now. Why do you think that is the case in a Colorado that was super competitive between the Democratic and Republican parties like just 10 years ago?
Well, there's been a shift in the population, for sure, a growing population. I think also, as the Republican Party has been taken over by by MAGA and Donald Trump, that doesn't reflect even the Republicans in the state anymore, and they're moving away from that. There's a massive influx of independent voters, as you know. And so we as Coloradans, we have that, that Western mentality, that ingenuity, independence, and grit. It's part of who I am. So I think a number of those factors, come together I guess the political makeup has shifted. When I was working hard, say at NARAL, Pro-Choice Colorado, Cobalt, or America Votes, it was pretty purple. And, Jeffco, where I live, where we live, was the bellwether. You could see
Right.
where things were turning because of how the swing county of Jefferson moved. It was a great indicator of the rest of the state, and it was fairly accurate. But things have just shifted in a different direction, and the state is far more Democratic than it was 10 and 20 years ago.
It's just crazy. Separate but related question, I suppose. You have built a rather unique coalition around your campaign. I mean, you have some folks who are very associated with sort of like the more progressive Working Families Party, lefty, like part of the party. You have some more establishment, even if these terms are like not even very useful at this point. You do have like a broad ideological spectrum supporting your campaign. Do you kind of find yourself anywhere in particular on that, or why do you think it is that you've been able to attract folks from sort of every faction of a Democratic Party to your campaign for SOS?
Well, I it's just been a joy to work with so many different organizations, individuals, and elected officials over these last 12 years. You said, why am I able to pull in such a diverse group of endorsers and supporters? And it's massive. I'm really proud of that and very touched by each individual endorser. I would say that when I came to the state house, I came to do work. I came to roll up my sleeves and actually do the work that people across the state needed us to do. And in that effort, or those efforts, it's been a consistent years-long dedication to all of these different issues. So equal pay for equal work, which I mentioned before, although inside the Capitol it was pretty divisive between um, uh, Democratic senators and Republican senators. In our communities around the state, there isn't anybody who doesn't want equal pay. And so
Totally.
it was a very seen as a partisan issue inside the building, the Capitol, so to speak. But what I was doing was a demand from most of the people that I represent. And you could apply that across the board. So the Child Sex Abuse Accountability Amendment, again, this was wholly partisan, where not one Republican supported this measure, but in the communities, even in their own districts, very Republican-leaning districts, it was polling upwards of 90%. So we were doing the will of the people, but inside the building was seen as partisan. I worked on veterans issues, worked on environmental protections, worked on farm worker Bill of Rights, worked on other labor issues where even within labor, that's a very diverse community. And so,
Sure.
I did the apprenticeship directory. Well, that's a different set of constituents touched by the measure that I passed than, say, the farm worker Bill of Rights. So I really believe that it was connecting with a really diverse group of people, individuals, leaders, organizations, unions, etc., who were really focused on getting the work done that needed to get done. And when you build those relationships and they trust you, they can, from day one, when I launched the campaign, we had so many people on board to say, I'm with Jessie. Honestly, they doesn't matter who gets in the race. We're with her because she's the one we need. And so I've been really pleased. And also to be able to get work done with so many different types of Democrats on whichever end of the spectrum you're thinking about. I'm so proud of the relationships I've built with these individual people, but the communities they represent, and that they've all come together around my race, I think is a good indicator of why it's the right choice.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the issues you'll handle if you end up as the next Secretary of State. Colorado doesn't really have the sort of like massive black population like some of the southern states that will be most directly impacted by the recent Calais decision, essentially gutting the Voting Rights Act and paving the way for racial gerrymandering across the Deep South. We're seeing this in Louisiana, maybe Alabama, maybe Mississippi. They're just erasing black districts, packing and cracking voters, and trying to remove their voices and representation. But do you have a sense of how that decision might impact Colorado, or is there any like potential consequences that we'll have to face as a result of the Supreme Court gutting the VRA?
I think that we've built up a really, really strong system in Colorado to protect Colorado voters from this kind of thing. I think there will be impacts, but what I will say immediately, what I'm seeing is that Coloradans have their eyes open and their ears open, and they are ready to act. They are ready to get the vote out here in Colorado in some of these swing districts where we need to take them back. And so it's part of the nationwide effort to shut down this kind of just dismantling of our democracy. That's kind of the immediate response that I see, is that there's now a new renewed dedication to restoring these rights across the country that I didn't see maybe a few years ago. But although, again, like I said, we've we've built the right system here in Colorado, I think there will be impacts. And I think also we need to address the redistricting issue on its own. That that effort, and honestly, my opponent was a key factor, as she kind of spearheaded that commission to an independent redistricting commission, but clearly does not reflect the makeup and the political will of Coloradans. And so I think that we have to be open to new ideas and how to kind of push back on this horrid gerrymandering by the Trump administration, precisely designed to give him extra seats, which he has also been completely transparent about.
It's wild, yeah.
Yeah, which again, it's just there's so many things that we never thought we'd have to really deal with. But we do, we should, and we need to be bold,
Well, so let's talk a little bit about that. There's this measure on the ballot that would essentially give Colorado voters, not in 2026, but in 2028 at least, and 2030, basically a gerrymandered fight back map that would give Democrats the opportunity to get about 7 of the 8 states' congressional districts and only 1 left for Republicans. Have you had a chance to think about where you are on that? Do you support that initiative? Do you think it should be temporary? Do you think we should just grab the reins because redistricting is now part of the political arsenal? Like, where are you on that particular measure?
I think what you said at the end of your question is where I'm sitting is, I don't agree that this independent redistricting commission is serving the people. We have diminished the voice of Coloradans because they are not accurately and adequately represented in Washington, D.C. When we have 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans, you're just actively diminishing the Democratic voice of the majority of the state of Colorado. And so, yeah, I believe we need to address it, and we need to be bold. And again, we should not have to be considering this kind of action.
Totally.
But we are being stripped of our rights by the person in the White House, and when he can say without any hesitancy, go and find me more Republicans in Congress and change the laws to do it. We are in scary territory. And so, yeah, I am in favor of bold action back. Wish we didn't need to, but I don't like timid Democrats who think that, we're just going to moral high ground our way out of this. We're not. And it will already, I believe, have a generational impact. We need to mitigate the damage and start to push back.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about how the president is unfortunately trying to interfere in our elections. There are rumors and even some recent reporting that Donald Trump is working on plans to interfere with our mail ballot system in Colorado. You, having authored that law, know a ton about it, helped implement it as a member of the commission. He even claimed without evidence that Democrats are trying to, quote, steal the election in California after what happened this Tuesday, because there is a Democrat and probably a Republican at the top of the ballot. It makes very little sense. What should our current Secretary of State and county clerks be doing right now to prepare for interference from Washington in our elections? And then what would you do as Secretary of State for the next 2 years of Trump's hopeful, probable, likely presidency to end at that point to safeguard us against any further actions they might take to interfere with our system?
Yeah, so I have full confidence in the county clerks around the state. I want to mention one quick thing, Ian. Part of the joy of this campaign also has been, from when I launched last July, I got in my car and I drove, and I sat with clerks from the Republican Party, independent clerks, Democratic clerks in more populous counties, middle counties, rural counties, to understand exactly what the challenges are that they're facing. And we have to give them a huge amount of credit for the work that they do on the day-to-day. And I know that right now they are working together as an association and then individually in their own counties to prepare for what they shouldn't have to prepare for. And they're working with Secretary Griswold as she finishes her term. So I know that work is happening, and I am involved as much as I can be, because again, I fully intend to win this primary. I fully intend to win the general, and I don't want to lose this year of integrating myself into this the world of elections administration and being more properly prepared to support the clerks with what they need. And this is a key point where this person in this office is going to need to continue to respond in a genuine and thorough and rapid way. And so I think what is going to be really important too is a constant and consistent communication back to the voters across the state. Trump is really good at sowing chaos because he lies. And part of that is trying to convince Coloradans that our system is flawed and it has room for fraud, which over and over and over again we have shown and proven that it does not, and it has not, and it will not. But you need a person in this office to lead with integrity that the people trust. And so, again, I see it when I go into the Main Street cafe or brewery. I do tend to have a number of campaign stops at the local breweries. You know, Coloradans, we're proud of our craft breweries.
Right.
But to sit and listen, that's what one of the clerks said to me that I just love. They said, because they're supporting me, and they said, you know what I liked? You took the cotton out of your ears and you put it in your mouth. I said, yes. But you can't have a Secretary of State who's unfamiliar with the challenges facing Coloradans, whether they're in La Plata or Larimer.
Right.
And so you have to understand and you have to be able to respond. And they know that I'm the one in this race who is genuinely invested in the needs of the voters and what the clerks need to serve them.
Do you think that they'll be able to mess with us, or do you think that our system is strong and secure enough that it'll prevent any messery from the White House?
I think that what we have done in my time in the legislature and before is about what we can to make illegal the kinds of threats that I hear in a really visceral way every time I go to a town hall or a meet and greet or any kind of an event where voters want to get to know me. You can hear the fear, you can see it on their face. What if they send ICE into the polling places? And this is what, and of course they should be fearful of the potential attacks the Trump administration could wage. But what the people of Minnesota showed us too is that when we work and act together, we can protect our friends and neighbors in the face of Donald Trump and the face of ICE attacks. And so, you know, whether it's polling places or just in general, again, we have, in my time in the Senate, we've done quite a lot to protect Coloradans from ICE, from the attacks that Trump could wage. And it is, unfortunately, not every state can say that. And it's just political makeup of their state legislatures. We and I, backed these measures, took it upon ourselves to proactively prepare for this kind of thing. Where when it comes to polling place access, I feel confident that we've made illegal most of those things that people fear. However, what we are preparing for now is how to respond when he does break the law and upend the constitutional protections that we have at the state and federal levels, and so that we are ready in real time to hold that to account and to restore whatever has been disrupted. And I am confident that between the Secretary of State's office and the county clerks now for the 26 elections that they are prepared. And you better believe that there is no one more dedicated to preparing for the 2028 elections, or basically immediately after I am able to take this seat, whether you are a city administrator of elections, a county clerk, a tribal representative, that will be my primary focus: defend and protect.
Well, Jessie Danielson, state senator, Democratic candidate for Secretary of State in Colorado, and third-time friend of the pod. Thank you so much for coming back on the show. If people want to get involved in the campaign or learn more, where should they find you?
JessieDanielson.com. And I am on social media. Just search Jessie Danielson, but I am not on Twitter or X.
Same. We quit. Yeah.
Right. So everywhere else, you can find me. But yeah, JessieDanielson.com. And I look forward to hearing from you and hopefully earning your listeners and viewers' support.
Well, Jessie, thanks so much for coming back on the show. Good luck. 25 days left in the race as of this recording. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care, everybody. Thank you so much, Ian.
Thank you.